Hey everyone, and welcome to True Crime Pillow Talk, where we talk all things true crime. And if you are new here and interested in all things true crime, please subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new videos that are posted weekly. I also want to note that every video and podcast episode does have a trigger warning and can be graphic details listed or stated in the video or podcast episode, so please only watch if you're of age. Thank you all for your support, and we will get on to today's case. Brenda Sue Schaefer was born in Louisville, Kentucky on April 25th, 1952. She was the youngest of 6 to Essie and John Schaefer, and they were raised as a Catholic family. Described by her family and friends as a shy child that grew up super intelligent, very reliable, and punctual as a person, which was needed for the job that she was in, which was a nursing assistant. In 1971, disaster struck the Schaefer family when Brenda's oldest brother, John, aka Jack Schaefer, was killed in the line of duty alongside of his partner. He was killed trying to catch thieves for a burglary of a roofing company. Brenda was actually going to be getting married to her high school sweetheart right after disaster struck the family. So she decided to put the wedding on hold just to recuperate and get back together due to the devastating loss. Brenda did end up getting married to him after a while, and after 4 years of them being married, the couple decided that they were both too young to be married and decided to split. Brenda then started working for Dr. William Spalding, and they considered her smart, efficient, and got along well with both her colleagues and the patients that she assisted. Brenda at the time owned a condo in DuPont Square outside of Louisville, but in the mid-1980s, she moved back nearby Warner Avenue where she grew up to take care of her parents. Since her mother Essie was diagnosed with lupus and heart problems, which made things worse after she suffered a massive stroke. In 1987, Brenda went on a blind date with a divorcee named Melvin Henry Ignato. Mel was born on March 26, 1938, and was also a resident of Louisville, Kentucky as well, and he had 3 kids, and he was considered just a normal average dude. Melvin was actually a successful businessman who was 14 years older than Brenda, but the couple got along and they actually started dating. On February 14th, 1987, the couple got engaged, and Mel actually bought Brenda a 2.3 carat custom designed diamond. At that point, the relationship was considered to be perfect, and only a year after the couple got engaged, Brenda actually started stating to her friends and colleagues that there was issues in the relationship. She stated that Mel was no longer caring and attentive, but now he was starting to be abusive physically and mentally, and she wanted to leave him, but at this point, Mel was not aware of her breaking things off. On September 24th, 1988, the 2-year anniversary of their first date, Mel asked her to bring over some jewelry that he had left at her home because she decided to actually break things off with him. After this encounter, Brenda was actually never seen again. Since Brenda was her parents' caretaker, whenever she went out, she always made sure to either give her mom or her dad a call and let her know that she was staying out late, to not worry them, so they didn't stay up late or, worry about her and her whereabouts, because they knew she was going to be home late, or that she was coming home, it was just going to be at a later time. Brenda's mother, Essie, called Melvin the next day on the 25th of September to inform him that she was concerned because Brenda never came home and she never called her to let her know that she was staying out all night or that she wasn't coming home. Mel told Essie that Brenda and him stayed up late talking about their wedding plans over dinner at the Gold Star Chili restaurant, and they drove to River Road where they spent some time talking and walking by the river. Brenda then took Mel home on Floridian Road at around 11:30 p.m. before she headed home herself. Around 4 a.m., Brenda's youngest brother, Tom, actually called the police to report her missing, and her vehicle was found the day after on the side of a busy road. Brenda drove a 1984 Buick Regal and was found less than half a mile from her home. Her back window was missing and the passenger door was unlocked. The radio was missing, and someone attempted to steal the speakers but was unsuccessful. The police officer noted that the car was covered in dew, stating that the car had been parked on the side of the road for quite some time. And they found a small amount of O positive blood, which happens to be a perfect match to Brenda's blood type, but they could not verify that it was her blood. Divers actually searched the Ohio River, but as far for Brenda, she just up and vanished. Her family, along with her boss, Dr. William Spalding, offered a $25,000 reward for any information in her disappearance, but that led nowhere, just to a whole bunch of fake calls, people calling in saying that they found her or stuff like that, just to try and get the reward. Police were astonished and confused at this time. They even questioned Mel, and they stated that the last time he saw Brenda was that night of the 24th at 11 p.m. He told police that the relationship was going great and that he and Brenda even set up a wedding date. And the police were told by both family and friends that Brenda was not happy and wanting to end the relationship due to the abuse. Melvin told police that due to the publicity on the case, that people were looking at him differently as a man and they were treating him poorly. He also stated that police were victimizing an innocent man, and that was devastating enough for a man that suffered the loss of a loved one. He denied a polygraph test, stating that they're unreliable, so it could have easily stated that he killed her was his reason as to why he didn't want to do it. But really, when Brenda got to Mel's house to return his belongings, he took her to Mary's house and the murder took place. In 1988, Brenda's boss, William Spalding, was charged with writing a death threat to Mel if he continued to deny any information about the case of Brenda. They went on trial and Melvin testified against William in court, and Spalding was charged with a misdemeanor and owed $300. 2 months later, in October of 1989, they took interest in Mel's need for publicity. They, as in the police. The police invited him to testify in front of a grand jury to clear his name, and during his testimony, he brought up his 39-year-old ex-girlfriend, Mary Ann Shore, that he was with actually 10 years prior to being with Brenda. The police questioned her and even allowed her to testify to the grand jury, where she confessed that she was with Mel and helped him murder Brenda. A few weeks before the murder, Melvin reached out to Mary about Brenda leaving him, and he was not willing to let that happen. So Mary and Melvin created a plan to kill Brenda at Mary's home, and the plan was to kill her and then bury her in the wasteland behind Mary's home. But before killing her, Melvin wanted Brenda to be tortured, and he was to follow a strict list of tortures that he created himself. Mary and Melvin spent several weeks preparing for the murder before it actually took place. The preparation included the torturing list, digging the grave, and screen-proofing the home. They ensured that the home was screen-proofed by having Melvin walk to the end of the driveway, and Mary would scream as loud as she could at the top of her lungs throughout the entire house just to make sure that Melvin could not hear her outside. On September 24th, 1988, Brenda was ending things with Melvin and went to drop off his jewelry, and that's when Melvin then took Brenda to Mary's house at gunpoint, and her house was off Popular Level Road, and he stripped her naked, blindfolded her, gagged her, and tied her to a coffee table, all while Mary took photos of him doing this. Mel then started sexually and physically assaulting her, and once the torture list was complete, he killed Brenda with chloroform. Melvin took all of Brenda's jewelry off and wrapped her in a garbage bag and roped her up, tied her up with rope, and then buried her body in the grave previously dug. They then neatly folded her clothes, put them in a separate bag, and dug a separate hole and buried him in there. After the confession from Mary, she took police to the body, and due to the decomposition of the body, the coroner was unable to locate any DNA linked back to Melvin, but the coroner was able to find evidence of abuse, which coincided with Mary's story. The police decided to strike a deal with Mary. If you get us sufficient evidence from Melvin himself that he did this, we in turn will only charge you with tampering with evidence, which is a minor crime. She agreed. So they made the deal, and on January 9th, 1990, Mary met with Melvin. Mary and Melvin met on January 9th, 1990 at Erla's ice cream shop, and she recorded their entire conversation. During the conversation, Mary told Melvin that the FBI was on her case and informed her that the wasteland behind her home was now up for sale. Melvin informed her and stated in the recording that she had on her phone, "I am not worried, as the place we dug is not shallow." On January 10th, 1990, Melvin was then charged with Brenda's murder. In 1990, Mel was charged with the murder of Brenda, and the trial was moved outside of the Louisville, Jefferson County area to Kenton County, where there was little to no news coverage on this case. However, the jury acquitted him. They believed that Mary actually committed the crime, and she was just framing Mel for it. The judge who worked the case was actually so upset with the acquittal that he actually took it upon himself to write a personal apology letter to the family of Brenda, apologizing for what the jury just did. He also stated that he was embarrassed by the choice and very apologetic for this, and he had to send it to Brenda's family due to the fact that Brenda's mother died after her body was found. Her mother was 74 years old, and her father died a year later at 77 years old. In 1990, Mel was charged with the murder of Brenda, and the trial was moved outside of the Louisville, Jefferson County area to Kenton County, where there was little to no news coverage on this case. However, the jury acquitted him. They believed that Mary actually committed the crime, and she was just framing Mel for it. The judge who worked the case was actually so upset with the acquittal that he actually took it upon himself to write a personal apology letter to the family of Brenda, apologizing for what the jury just did. He also stated that he was embarrassed by the choice and very apologetic for this, and he had to send it to Brenda's family due to the fact that Brenda's mother died after her body was found. Her mother was 74 years old, and her father died a year later at 77 years old. The judge who worked the case was embarrassed by the choice of the jury, that he personally took it upon himself to write an apology letter to her family, stating how embarrassed he was by the choices that the jury made for this case, and the acquittal that was now in place for Melvin. Brenda's mother actually died after her body was found. Her mother was 74 years old, and her father died just a year after her mother at 77 years old, and it's stated that they died due to stress and heartbreak. Since Mary was already given a plea deal, she could not be prosecuted for the murder. A while after the trial took place, police found a camera with photos, and the double jeopardy applied in this case, and Mel could no longer be retried, even though he confessed to a grand jury that he did in fact kill Brenda. 6 months after the acquittal, Mel's house was sold to fund his defense, and a carpet layer was working when he pulled up a length of carpet in the hallway. After the pulled carpet was picked up from the floor, there was a floor vent that was obviously taken out because the flooring was being removed and replaced, and inside the floor vent was a bag that was taped up inside the vent to hold it up from falling down, and inside the bag was the jewelry that Brenda took to Mel that night she was killed, and 3 rolls of undeveloped film. Although the person in the film did not show their face, the body and hair pattern and molds matched exactly to Mel. Mel knew he could not be tried for the murder, so he just confessed to the murder. He even looked at Brenda's brother in court and told them he had to kill her, but she died peacefully. Mel was sentenced to 8 years in prison, and of those 8, he only served 5. And the state later prosecuted him on perjury charges for the testimony given on Brenda's employer for threatening to kill him if he did not reveal where she was. On January 14, 2002, Mel was sentenced to another 9 years for that trial and was then released December 1st, 2006. Mel went back to Louisville and lived only 4 miles from the home in which he murdered Brenda in. On September 1st, 2008, Mel was found dead in his apartment. He was 70 years old, and the autopsy determined that Mel died from an accidental fall that lacerated his head or his arm, and he bled to death due to the laceration. And the neighbor who found his body stated, and I quote, "It looked like he had fell and he tried to go to the kitchen. There was a blood trail that way, and then it looked like he tried to make it to his room. Before he made it to his room, that's where they found his body at." The neighbor also stated